Good afternoon, everybody. So we are the last session of the day. It's been an incredible day one. Always a lot of energy at Smart City Expo USA, and we're very fortunate to have a great panel tonight, this afternoon. And I want to introduce myself. I'm Monte Monash. I'm the CEO of Monash Advisory Group, which is a consulting firm. We are a small firm, and we offer business development professional services for our clients and helping them strategically, win work. That's our job. So today, it's not about me. It's actually about these three folks that are here. I'm excited to introduce this panel. We have with us Sigmund. He's a Chief Public Outreach Officer for the Gateway Development Commission. We have Priya Jain. She's the President of Americas for Mace Consult. And we have Gertler, who is the Executive Chairman and CEO of U.S. News and World Report. So Stephen is a friendly face behind public outreach for the Gateway program. He has a critical role in the rail project that serves 200,000 daily passengers and supports 20% of our nation's economy. Stephen has a knack for translating complex policy into everyday language. His deep regional insights and calm, thoughtful approach make him a trusted guide on our journey to modernizing U.S. infrastructure. And I can attest for the fact
I can leave now. It's perfect.
I can attest. He is very calm. He's been very calm. Priya Jain. Priya is actually a personal hero of mine, and I really, really do appreciate her. Priya leads the Americas at Mace Consult with a passion for transforming how mega projects are delivered, from corporate to real estate to major infrastructure projects. Known for her warm leadership style and sharp mind, Priya is a proven executive with a record of growing teams and driving success, which makes her an inspiring force in the world of modern infrastructure, and I really do enjoy her. And if you're not following her on Instagram, please do. She's great. Gertler. He is the Executive Chairman, like I said, and CEO of U.S. News and World Report. He brings a refreshing blend of savvy business insight and genuine warmth to his role as Executive Chairman of the very important U.S. News and World Report. Before leading the nation's trusted news authority, he has made a mark in government as Commissioner, President, and CEO of Empire State Development, and he has served in key economic roles in the New York City government. Eric's dynamic yet forward-thinking style, along with his hands-on experience, makes him an advocate for building modern and resilient infrastructure. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Priya, and thank you, Stephen, for being with us today. I have a question to get you guys started, and there's a little bit of framing that I want to do, which is McKinsey estimates the world needs to spend about $57 trillion of infrastructure dollars to be globally stable for the GDP by 2030. As the demand for larger and more complex infrastructure projects continue to grow, and each of you have an impressive amount of firsthand experience with mega projects, the execution and delivery, it becomes critical to address the various obstacles, or better said, challenges that arise at all phases of mega projects that each of you know all too well. With that framing, I just want to ask a question to each of you, which is, please share how you've managed public engagement and environmental impacts while ensuring design and construction integrity, as well as balancing the cost and quality while meeting regulatory standards and integrating technology and innovation to ensure successful mega infrastructure projects. Big question.
A simple question.
Big question.
Right, exactly. First of all, Monte, I want to say thank you to you for your preparation for this and your warmth and professionalism, really, in moderating this.
I appreciate that.
So we were talking before the panel backstage, and when Monte sort of talked about that question, I sort of said, one day at a time, and what she said was, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And that really is how you build, at least in my experience so far, with this gigantic, largest rail infrastructure project in the country, how you build a mega project. And it is a day-by-day experience where you are balancing all of the needs of the various stakeholder groups that you just talked about. And something changes every day with some of those stakeholder groups, and what you just have to do is just keep going. you know, and take the challenges one challenge at a time, and keep going until you, you know, eventually the whole elephant gets eaten.
And the project's done, on time, on budget. Easy.
Keep it simple, right? On budget and on schedule. So as I think about infrastructure, at the end of the day, I kind of call it the things that the connectivity between all the communities, right? So budget, schedule, what do you need to do, that's table stakes. But at the end of the day, is it really adding on to the value, right? What is it doing for communities and people, and how is it making it more valuable for them? I think that's one of the things we have to keep in the back of our minds. Are we delivering an outcome? And how do you deliver it? I kind of call it collaborative delivery, which is what Gateway is doing. And what is collaborative delivery? It's really bringing all the stakeholders together and keeping them focused on, here's the outcome. And what's the outcome? If I look at Hudson Tunnel, it's not just about building a tunnel. It's not just about going ahead and rehabbing an existing tunnel. It's really about creating that economic development in that area. It's about being able to get customer experience going. It's about adding jobs. And it's also about making sure that you're getting workforce development going. So how do you deliver it? You kind of keep the end goal in mind. Technical work is table stakes. I'm not saying it's not difficult. Yes, it can be difficult. But we have to keep on saying who's the end user and what are we doing to go ahead and add on to their quality of life.
Great, so it's about people.
Yeah, it's about the people, exactly.
I absolutely agree. Well, first of all, Monte, thank you so much for having me on this panel, and it's a privilege being with you, Stephen, and you, Priya. When I think about infrastructure, I couldn't agree with you more, the importance of infrastructure, and I think today, when you complete this huge infrastructure project, whatever it may be, I think it's something that gives the community hope. The idea that government can work and get something that's significant to the community done just, you know, I think rallies people. In my mind, to your question, there's a lot to consider, but I just wanted to raise a few points. One is, remember that a lot of these projects are going on for decades. And so you need to be able to, at whatever stage you come in on, and I had the privilege of being involved with the renovation here at Javits Center, with Monash, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and the Belmont redevelopment project, among other projects that I had under my remit running Empire State Development. Some of those projects went in for a long time, so you've got to understand where the people are in each one of those stages. As Stephen said, there's something that happens every day, there's people that are critical, and you need to think about how you're managing that at whatever stage you're at. The second thing is you've got to be very focused on the budget. These projects can very easily spiral out of control, and you've got to be on a regular basis looking at your project, your budget costs, and making sure that you're in line. And then the last point, and I agree completely with Priya about the public engagement part. I often think that when I compare the public sector to the private sector, the public sector is a three-dimensional challenge, and the private sector is a two-dimensional challenge. That difference, I think, is the public engagement. And it's really important that if you're going to have a project that's going to live with the community for decades, that community has real input and, in a sense, real ownership. If I think about the work that we did at the Belmont project where the New York Islanders now play, there was certainly a community advisory meetings that happen every month that went through the RFP, went through the scope, got feedback from the community on what were the benefits to the community, like the parks that we added, the community center. But in addition to that, at ESD, we had regular meetings. I think we ended up having 32 additional meetings. We met with over 1,000 people. And at the end of the day, I mean, before we finished the project, there was litigation. And the reason why it went forward is the judges looked at that and said, here was a project where there was real community engagement. And I think that's so critical for these projects that are going to live in the community for decades to come.
Thank you. Thank you for giving that human factor to all of this, because really these projects are so large that sometimes the numbers, we can't really wrap our brains around it. And now you see on, I have teenagers, so I see a lot of Instagram, a lot of TikTok, a lot of, you know, social media references. And when you see those images of the rice, have you all seen the rice grain, where you show one rice grain is 100,000 and then there's 1 million, and it goes on, and you start to see this massive amount of rice. So these projects are those large dollars, those large infrastructure investments that people want to see some very serious bottom line, how does it affect me kind of results. So, so thank you for sharing your perspective on that question. Eric, I'm going to stay with you and ask you a question because you really do seem like a problem solver. You are giving solutions, you're coming to the table with not just yourself in mind, but with what you are trying to represent and what you are responsible for as a steward. So I want to ask you, could you please share your recall, and this is a setup for some of your wonderful projects that you just referenced, but share a recall on how you effectively changed through and addressed some of the small and large challenges to successfully modernize these impressive developments that you've worked on.
Well, thank you. You know, I refer back to the comment that that Stephen made, where every day there's a new challenge, something that comes up. It may be related to the actual construction that's going on. It may be a public policy issue. Any number of things with with these mega projects. I want to share some of the stories related to Moynihan Train Hall. I literally can painfully tell you a story about every piece of marble that's in Moynihan, but I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you a little bit about some of the marble. The interesting thing about Moynihan when we completed it, it was a $1.6 billion project. That was a project, Moynihan Train Hall. So it started with Senator Moynihan's vision. So this again was a project that had gone on for decades. Even before I started in my role and was talking to the governor, and I worked for Governor Cuomo at the time, he had said to me, he goes, when you come aboard full time, I want you to focus on getting Moynihan done. That was his #1 priority. So guess what? It became my #1 priority. And on my desk, I wrote, one of the few things I kept on my desk all the time, it said Moynihan Train Hall. And every day when I came in, I thought about Moynihan Train Hall. And, obviously Empire State Development, which is the state's principal economic development agency, we had lots of projects going on. But I made sure that every single day I focused on Moynihan, whether calling someone, making sure something was being pushed, and also made sure that I became the principal person to be in contact with the governor so everybody else could focus on the work. I could deal with the problems and delivering bad news if need be, or hopefully good news. As many of you know the governor's reputation, he cared primarily about getting these projects done on time and on budget. And I remember early on we had an advisor who was in a meeting, and we were meeting with the governor, and this advisor was waxing poetically, and he said to the governor, he says, does anybody know today whether the Roman Colosseum was done on time or on budget? And I was looking at the governor going, like, he did not like this analogy, and he's like listening, and he goes, yeah, we're going to get this done on time and on budget. And this advisor was like, and going through all of these other historical sites, I think I was like, yeah, that's great, but we're going to do it on time and on budget. What happened for us is that, Moynihan was going along really, really well. And then, as we all know, COVID hit. And so when we planned, the project schedule at the beginning, we had, prior to COVID, we had 1,700 people on the job every single day. When COVID hit, because, and as you all know, COVID was first and foremost a health crisis, and then it was an economic crisis. But we had allowed essential construction sites to continue, so Moynihan was allowed to continue. But because of the health rules, we went from 1,700 people a day on the job down to 170. A little bit of a problem when you had a little bit less time. So that was one problem we had to get around. The second problem that we had was, and I talked about the marble, we had this special Covellano marble that was going into the waiting room in the LIR space. And of all places in the world, where was the marble coming from? Just outside of Milan. And what was Milan? Milan was the epicenter for COVID in Europe. So we had a little bit of a problem then, especially, and as you all remember, all of the distribution channels were disrupted. So we had to figure out how to get the marble from Milan to Moynihan Train Hall on time, which ultimately, because of all the disruptions, we were able to airship it in a way that was really cost effective. Then, you know, and you can't make up this stuff, and when you go through Moynihan, you have all these LED screens. Where were the screens coming from? China. And not just China, from a place outside of Wuhan. What was the epicenter of COVID in China? Wuhan. So we had to figure out how to build in the meantime, which meant that we left all these holes where the screens were going to go and built right around it until the moment that the screens were going to show up. And those showed up, you know, literally just a month or two beforehand. Then we had a contract with Amtrak that required us to wait 90 days after everything, you know, all the internal projects were completed. So for example, Amtrak had 90 days after every single escalator was completed. So we worked with them to allow it to be one escalator at a time. I mean, so this is just an example of a bunch of different projects that kept on, or problems that kept on coming up. We ended up opening Moynihan. We did the ribbon cutting ceremony on December 30th. Moynihan was going to open up on January 1st. The fire inspection was done the day before, and the condo papers to get signed was literally done the day before. So we got it done just in the nick of time. One last story. When you walk into Moynihan and you go down the escalators, there's a marble, you know, piece of marble with engraved into it says Moynihan 1910 to 2020. We had to make a decision about 6 months before if we were going to have the marble engraved as 2020 or 2021. And we didn't know whether we were going to get on time. And I remember thinking about it. I made the decision that we were just going to buy a piece of marble and engrave it with 2020. We weren't going to get a separate one for 2021. We were going to go all in on getting it on time. And if we didn't, obviously I was going to get a lot of heat because we were going to miss it. But it said to the team, we are going to get it done. And again, hats off to the team that I had. Hats off to everybody beforehand, because it's not one person, it's a group of people. But those are some of the issues that we had.
Thank you. I mean, it's about collaboration. It's about determination.
It's about the people. And we had a great team, and not just a great team at the time, but you know, lots of public servants who had spent years on it over the course of time, and that's how these projects get done.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Priya, I wanted to ask you a question. You have spent your career span working on all kinds of mega projects, and at the time they weren't called that, but now we are looking back and we're saying, you know, that was pretty darn big too. But now you're working on the Gateway Hudson Tunnel project as well as many other things. So you know what it means to have projects that basically are a catalyst for change, and they increase the economic development of the cities that you work within and those communities. So my question for you is, what role do you think the supply chain plays in shaping infrastructure? Specifically, how do you keep innovating on a project to be resilient, efficient, reliable, and deliver with today's solutions for how we will live in the future?
So before I answer that, Eric, I need a personal tour of the Moynihan station. The stories that you're telling, I'm like, absolutely. I want to walk that and see where it is.
I think we're all ready for that.
Yes, exactly. So Monte, I know you and I have worked together for a really long time, and I've spent about 30 years working in infrastructure, and I have to admit there were times where, as Eric and Steve have pointed out, these can be programs that go on forever and ever. So there were times where I was pulling my hair out and saying, why am I doing this? Am I even going to see the end result, right? It's all about the people. But if I look at, I feel like we are right now in that golden age of infrastructure, and I'm talking about Americas. I'll bring a little bit home to US. We are doing the Hudson Tunnel, one of the largest jobs in the country right now. It's going to have such a huge impact on the economic development over here. If I look in Canada, and I'll bring Canada here, they're across the border, and as Mace, we do a lot of work in Canada, and they're spending about $60 billion worth of work on metro links, which we are helping them deliver, and it goes back to that collaboration and supply chain. And one of the biggest things we are hearing And in Canada, the other one that has been, if you all have been reading the news, is the high-speed rail, which goes from Quebec City to Toronto. And it's interesting, as we are going through talking to different supply chain, one of the biggest things is how can we bring collaboration across, right? Because there are things that get done in the rest of the world, and how do you bring it over? And then, by the way, how do you end up also then, I'll use the word upskilling, but maybe it's not really upskilling, it's about sharing knowledge and knowledge transfer, right? Because we all have different experiences that we bring in. And the other one is around Peru, which I want to highlight because that ties into a little bit of the digital piece. So we are responsible and we are working with our clients over there in Peru, delivering schools and hospitals. And and I kind of go back to the why behind it. Why do these programs get done? One of the big things was El Nino and flooding, as well as socioeconomic issues, which is what led to the government investing in those schools and hospitals. And we are delivering about 140 infrastructure projects, which will impact 400,000 families. And I was fortunate enough to have visited one of the hospitals about 2 weeks ago, which takes about 4 hours to get to, is about a 100-mile radius where the communities come into this hospital to get treated. And when we started that program, COVID hit. Same story as COVID. We couldn't stop the program because there was a huge issue, El Nino was going to happen, and we had to immediately switch to figuring out how do we end up bringing innovation in. And that's where the digital pieces came in. So yes, it was essential infrastructure, but when you start adding, a lot of workforce was coming from parts outside of Peru. Then you add in, how do you end up working with the supply chain and making sure that you have a system set up where you can do real time because you could not be in places together. We had to set up computing, virtual workspaces, we had to train people, we had to go ahead and actually end up putting early warning systems in place so that way we could go ahead and deliver these programs. So suddenly our industry actually, I used to call it this thing that we were a stodgy industry. It took us a little while to really start adopting technology, and it absolutely jumped leaps, and we ended up really deploying a lot of that digital pieces. And I think the other thing was going back to knowledge transfer, BIM. Actually, we used this, the COVID, as a lever to go ahead and get new BIM standards into Peru. So I think that's where the innovation comes in.
Do you want to share what BIM is?
Yeah, the Building Information Management System. So it's really about doing things digitally and being able to look at all the different systems and say, hey, you have your drawings. And how do you end up looking at clash detections, getting into a little bit of detail, but getting into clash detections and a bit of technical pieces. So how do you leverage? I think part of it is collaboration. The other part is also using technology to go innovate. And I'm a bit excited about AI. Now, I'm not saying we need more data. I think for me, AI is, artificial intelligence is exciting to start doing predictive analytics. So looking at what you talked about, right? Where do you get the marble from? It's about early risk identification and then saying, how do you go about putting mitigation steps in place? And part of AI is looking at the human factor analysis, right? So how do you tie data with humans to be able to actually get ahead of the game and look at risks ahead of it? And Eric, maybe we were talking to the same supplier because that time we were also building the Tiffany flagship store. And we had the same issue. We couldn't get the facade because the facade was coming from Europe. And there was a lot of logistics things that had to happen. So I think at the end of the day, I would say it's about starting with the end in mind and then really being able to look at the life cycle of the program and put in some of the early risk pieces in place and make sure that the team knows, create that vision and make sure that the team knows what are you driving towards, and then be nimble, because who predicted COVID? Because of COVID, a lot of things changed, so.
Yeah. And I think what's really important is that when you think of the outcome, you know, the end in mind and push forward and say, okay, well, how are we gonna solve this problem? I think what you do is you have to think about how this technology influences the engineering, the traditional engineering and design and construction industry. And so to embrace it is actually a good thing. It's actually making these large projects possible.
Yeah.
I don't think that we could do it without having technology. Obviously engineers, and for all the engineers out there, this is not a slam on you, but engineers think they can do everything, right? We can just give us a little bit more time, we can get it done. But with time not being something that people can play around with, you really have to have this innovation of technology infused in everything. So thank you for that. So Steve, I want to ask you a two-part question, actually. I know that you have, because you're sitting in that C-suite with the Gateway Development Commission, you are seeing all kinds of things because you have to translate that back out to the public. And so you need to know every aspect of what's going on because of that role that you play. So I'm going to ask you two questions. One has to do with the financing, and then something speaks more to the heart of what you do on a daily basis. So the first part is, what is the out-of-the-box approach? What out-of-the-box approach did the Gateway Development Commission take to get funding for the Hudson Tunnel project across the finish line and shovels in the ground? So that's the first part. And then I can come back to you with the second one after you ask that.
Well, so I'll try to be quick with that one. I mean, we've been trying to get this project built for, I think, 40 years. And actually, it started in, it's finishing the project that was completed in 1910 when they were supposed to build another two tubes under the Hudson. So this has been a long time coming. And in part, actually, that helped us because we were able to build a lot of support and across the aisle and politically, but also among stakeholders and unions and local communities, et cetera, right? So we had a bunch of support built up, and so when the moment was right, and we had the ability to go after the public financing that we've gotten to fund this project, we were ready to do it. That was really the biggest piece of it, that we had a moment, we knew we had a moment, and we had to go through all of the things that you have to go through with the federal government to get approval for grants and the loan system, the loan programs that we accessed. But really the innovation was, one, being ready and building all of the support over really, a lot of years, and two, taking advantage of the new grant programs that were funded under the bipartisan infrastructure law and the loan programs that we are accessing to pay for this.
Thank you. So it's very complicated, and these projects don't happen overnight. That's why they're mega, but they're also decades long in the coming. So the other part is it's either a keep you up at night question or it's a dream job for you question, which is with looming concerns around congestion pricing, the potential of a superstorm, the ever-changing political tides that we're in today and always. The public doesn't always agree, we all know that, and a myriad of unknown unknowns that are always around the corner and waiting to be uncovered. How do you manage the rich and complex stakeholder engagement for a project that will be in construction for the next 10 years? And we only have 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes left.
Good.
I'm going to let you, I think that we can go over just a little teeny tiny bit because I do want to hear that answer.
I appreciate that. So, again, actually, it's sort of the same answer, which is like one bite at a time, right? I mean, this is an incredibly long project, not just the period of time it took to get this approved and financed and in the ground, but it's going to be a 12-year construction project, right? So administrations change, obviously, in Washington and in Trenton and in Albany, and our other partners, Amtrak and New Jersey Transit and the Port Authority, their leadership changes, communities change, right? The people who are living in communities that are affected by the construction changes, the stakeholder groups change, the generation of construction workers who are going to work on this project, their average age right now is 55. So they're going to change. There'll be a younger generation coming in, right? So you really have to take these projects. I mean, I'm sorry to say it again, but it really is one day and one challenge at a time, and you got to keep building these relationships with all of those stakeholder groups over and over and over again. And one, as Priya talked about, it's really demonstrating that we are staying on scope, on schedule, and on budget, as to Eric's point about Governor Cuomo, right? And that we are being good stewards of public money and proving that over and over and over again to elected officials in particular, and then working with communities and stakeholder groups over years and years and years, right? I mean, I never thought that I would know the mayors of Weehawken and North Bergen as in New Jersey as well as I do, right?
They're your buds.
Or what's called the Shades community in Weehawken, 18th Street in Weehawken. That's down to that much because that's where we're building the fan plant, and that affects them every day and it affects their lives. And so we're there, as Eric talked about with those community meetings, we're there every quarter, meeting with that community and updating them on the construction and updating them on what they can expect. And that's in part because we have an obligation to do that. It's in part because we don't want them to sort of rise up and try to stop what's happening, which can happen. And it's a large part, at least in my view, to build capital, right? Because things are going to go wrong. With all of those communities I just talked about, from elected officials and labor unions and stakeholders and communities and real people and riders, things are going to go wrong. And so to the degree which you have built up capital and built up a story and built up trust, right? The fact that I know those communities now, that you can come back to them and say, you know what? We blew some stuff up last night and it was terrible, right? And we're going to figure out a way to fix it and not do it again. And they'll listen to you and hear you because you've been there and you've been there over and over and over again. Knowing people and gaining their trust and building capital is really important, but you also got to then spend that capital to get the projects done.
Thank you for that. I want to we are officially out of time, but just one word response to tell me what's in your heart about these mega projects, how it transforms these communities, builds that economic development, sparks a lot of hope and newness in a community. So just one word that's deep in your inside about what you think when you approach these mega projects. I'm going to start with Eric. Just one word.
Oh, you can't ask a media person for just one word.
Give me one word.
But I'll give you energy and hope.
I like that. Good job.
Yeah,
2 words.
the why, connecting it to the why.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd say it's a belief and these are a lot of words. Better quality. Sorry, I can't help it. Better quality of life, right, for actual people.
Yeah.
So I think in summary, first of all, I want to say thank you to our guests, our panelists. You all were great. Eric, Priya, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your experiences. I think that what's most important about mega projects is that it's not just the dollars. They're huge, we know that. You can take it one day at a time. You can start at the end and then work your way to the beginning. Or you can look at it and think about the people value of what's it all gonna take to get us all to the same point. So our panelists have been great for answering, these burning questions. But I think the most important thing for us to recognize is that it is about our community and that we're all here together trying to solve the same kind of problem, which is to make a better life and hopefully using some of these tools to make the future brighter in the end. So I want to say thank you for joining us and thank you for being here and staying through the end. It looks like a captivated audience. We can't see because of these lights, but it looks like a captivated audience.
And thank you to a great moderator.
Yeah, thank you, Monte. Well done. Thank you, and thank you all for being here.